Hi, everybody. This is the first of, I hope, a lot of other episodes for the genre literacy Substack. There is an in-house joke on to why the Substack is named genre literacy, but we are not going to go in there.
I think for
Uh,
that you need the guest to be here.
yes, which
We could.
which we have planned, which we have
Okay,
planned,
perfect,
because I do want to do a podcast on double indemnity, and I'm planning to bring her in for that. So let's see.
perfect. Yeah.
So now the thing about this, because genre literacy as a substack started because of my deep dive into noir,
Mhm,
as well as like streamlining my writing output into something much more. And this is in no way like throwing shade at all my other writing projects and everything, just trying to make it somewhat more substantial
mhm,
in a much more better cut. It's also because most recent movies has to, and to pardon my French, dog shit. So it's like I really did not want to extend so much of my time and resources on movies that I don't think is going to capture most of my interest.
mhm,
So if anybody has followed my first couple of posts on Substack, the idea was that I would be following three main topics. One was noir movies, the second was the American Western, and the third was the Jidaegekis.
mhm,
So while the start has been a somewhat, according to me, slow, for a lot of other people it has, for them it is being consistent only. So you get the idea. And the noir starting was quite okay, at least in my opinion. It could have been better, but so far it has been fine. And unlike the noir movies section where I thought I would move forward year by year, the Jidaigeki or the Japanese period films is a bit harder to pin down because I had no idea how I would like technically get away in.
mhm,
I do have a letterbox list where I was ranking and arranging all those Jidaigeki movies through, how do I put this, through historical year by year basis, like putting all the events of those films into a narrative through line. And that could be a way in, but I finally realized that I would like start by taking much more famous movies or much more movies. Like when you hear the word Jidaigeki or period cinema, what are the first couple of movies that come into your mind? I would like to enter in through that.
mhm,
And I thought that I think the better option would be to start with a much more bigger and grander topic. And what could be a more grander topic than Akira Kurosawa's Seven Samurai?
金にも出世にもならん。侍を二人三人集めても背にはつかん。死後に備えるだけでもよん。小詰めに二味。わしを入れてな。
しかし戦は結構乗りかする方で。
それはこちらが一人もやられん時の話だ。待て！戦は一人だけでするものではない。
みんな死ぬんだぜ。
人を守ってこそ自分も守れる。己のことばかり考える奴は己をも滅ぼす奴だ。
Long-winded way, and I forgot to do an introduction. But anyway, you get the idea. So,
No, I
in this
like I
scenario,
like I like professional introductions more than whatever BS we try to do on our
yeah,
actual podcast. So yeah, this was great,
yeah.
and you should follow Amartya Substack, please.
We-
Yeah.
Thank you. And again, like Dhruv, my co-host for this podcast, pointed out, hi, I'm Amartya Acharya. I am the, how do I put this, main author
Yeah, yeah,
of this
owner,
Substack,
everything, auteur.
owner and author of this Substack. Oh God, not the author theory again. Anyway, main owner of this Substack, and I would like to welcome my guest, Dhruv Krishna Goel, the co-host of
Thank
the
you.
Queen is Dead podcast. And I would also like to point out that I also would want this episode to go on the QID feed
It
as a
will. because
as a episode,
because
yeah.
because just based on the intro, it's more professional than most of the QIT episodes, I think.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I would like it to be there because it's also because in my pursuit of the exploration of the Jidaegeki cinema, I'm going to be referring to a couple of other episodes within QID as well, which I have done extensively with Dhruv.
Yeah.
And for that reason, I think it would be better if these collaborations exist in both of our feeds.
Yeah.
So hopefully this will work. And like how Dhruv introduces everybody in the QID podcast, also please follow QID podcast. We need more followers. Thank you. Anyway, so as Dhruv introduces his guests in the QID podcast, I would also like to introduce Dhruv by asking him about the director which, about whom we are talking today,
Yeah.
Akira Kurosawa. What was your introduction to him?
I think Seven Samurai, unsurprisingly, because it's just such a, as you said, like it's a Titanic name in cinema, cinephilia, and like whenever you hear or whenever you're getting into classical or classic cinema, it's one of the first titles that you watch regardless. I think, like even if you're, I think I took an international cinema class, which I very much attribute to my interest in whatever international cinema has become to me now. But like even before, I don't think we saw Akira Kurosawa's film there in the class because, firstly, it's 3.5 hours long. So, class time cannot accommodate that much. But I think we saw Kenji Mizoguchi's or
Mm.
some Ugetsu, I think. We saw
Mm.
that. But again, we did like 1 week, I remember, on Japanese cinema, and the three names that came, which are readily sort of Ozu,
Mizoguchi
Mizoguchi, and
and
Kurosawa.
Kurosawa.
And Kurosawa was very much, in the class said to be one of those names which, like, you don't need that much you don't need to be familiarized with, because almost a lot of the filmmaking, because of how a lot of his filmmaking has been transmuted or like transformed into more mainstream cinema abroad. So I think it was almost like a given that, Akira Kurosawa is a great. You don't need to know more about his work
Like
in this class. Yeah.
I think the preferred word for many people is Akira Kurosawa and is an institution. And
Yes.
to be honest, I can't exactly dispute that statement because
Yeah.
even if you look at his filmography, I'll be hard pressed to find a weak Kurosawa.
Yeah.
Maybe some of his earlier stuff, like
Hmm.
not even Shanshiro Shugata, but all the other stuff, like the ones he did as assistant director or some of the propaganda war films he did,
Sure.
and maybe his very late stuff, like
Yeah,
Dreams.
I remember being cold on Dreams, but then I watched it a long time back, and it's very different to whatever
Yeah.
Kurosawa has done. So again, I'm curious to rewatch it if anything else.
But when he
Yeah.
was in his peak in
Mm.
a partnership with Toho, the
Mm.
studio, when he was in his peak, I think, like the kids say, half of all of those movies are at least bangers in one or more than one ways. It's
Yeah.
like it's it's entertaining in a very commercial mainstream way, but like it's always inviting you for discussion, either from a filmic standpoint or from a thematic standpoint
Mm.
or in any other worldview that you can find. And of course, like there is a reason why great filmmakers, according to me, always stand the test of time, is because those complex relationships that they are trying to portray,
Mm.
they are always successful in portraying it in such a fashion that it becomes universally palatable to a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the whole, I think, art intersecting with entertainment. And as much
Yes.
as personally, some of us might have different preferences in preferring, films which are more quote unquote artsy or quote unquote more entertaining, when
Mm,
filmmakers manage to bridge that gap between art
mm.
and entertainment and sort of have them
The
working in
gap between
unison.
then the gap
Hmm.
between those different, like, points of views also get bridged very easily because
Yeah, and
you can.
I might have different favorite filmmakers, but the amount of reverence I think I have for filmmakers who've managed to, match those two very at times opposite sensibilities is never going to be less than, and Kurosawa is one of the first ones to do it. And later on, you'll see this happening in the best works of a Spielberg, of um,
Maybe a
Nolan, even, I
Scorsese.
think
Nolan
Scorsese.
definitely.
Yeah, so
Nolan definitely.
you'll get these sort of filmmakers where it'll lead on to these are your sort of blockbuster filmmakers who actually make, I think, or I would also say George Miller actually, just to throw in his
Yeah.
name because he's
I
yeah.
think interestingly, Nolan can be called one of the truer successors of Kurosawa in a way,
Oh,
like
wow, you're gonna
mixing
offend a
block.
lot of people.
Yeah, no, because it is mixing blockbuster
No, I
sensibility
know
with
that.
the
Yeah,
art house and the thematic
yeah,
sensibility, like almost extremely well. Like there is a reason why a movie like Oppenheimer, which is like 3 hours long,
yeah,
is resonating with so many people.
yeah,
It there is no reason for that movie to be like, of course there are reasons, but there is no reason for that movie to be as universally loved as it is, but it
yeah,
did.
yeah, yeah. Absolutely.
Something struck a chord, be it the directorial flourishes, mostly the directorial flourishes, be it the
Yeah,
performances or whatever be it.
yeah,
And I think Kurosawa managed to toe that line extremely well.
yeah. And
But of
I'm thinking because Kurosawa, correct me because my knowledge on Kurosawa's films is patchier than yours, just because I've not seen all of them. I've seen mainly the bigger names, I
bigger
think.
ones, yeah, yeah, yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I might have seen a couple of the smaller ones, but mainly the bigger ones. Ikiru is, I think, phenomenal in its writing also. So I don't think
Yes.
I think he co-wrote that because this is also co-written by with someone else. But yeah, I think it's this whole idea that he trafficked in a lot of genres, right? Like it's not like he stuck to sort of one type of movie. He worked in a lot of different sort of. Did he ever do like a comedy or anything, or was it more like a generally just in a slightly darker zone? There are comedic elements to his films. That's not there, but yeah,
I think he did more of like dark comedies in a way.
sure.
Like I'm pretty sure he did the Lower Depths, which was basically an
Hmm.
adaptation of
Jean
if
Renoir
I'm not
thing, no, I think.
no. The Lower Depths is more of an adaptation of, I think, The Idiot
Okay,
by yeah. So that was like a dark comedy in a way. It was
sure.
about it. It was about that. It was very very Russian because obviously the source material is also Russian, so you
Yeah.
can get the idea of where it's going.
Hmm.
And that is primarily because, and I also think that because what Kurosawa, I think Kurosawa's love of stories in a way is what
Hmm.
actually propelled him to do this.
Yeah.
And of course it's also because I think he worked as a, I think he was a painter, if I'm not
Hmm.
mistaken. He was a painter, and one of the primary reasons why his filmmaking style and all of his other work is so like distinctive is because of his painterly background.
Yeah.
Like there are some short compositions, there is like how much can your academic knowledge or like experience, how much of it can it help if
Yeah.
you don't actually have some background of some of the other backgrounds that are necessary in this scenario. And in this case it's like, I think even in Seven Samurai, some of those short selections, like how he
There
chooses the
is, I
foreground
don't
and
know. Did he?
background.
I've not read up on his upbringing or
Mm.
anything, but there is a particular, and this is just from we spoke extensively, and I think that's one of our better discussions. Not to like tuta on Akira Kurosawa's Rashomon.
Yes.
Amartya and me and Anurag, I can say his name, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We spoke on Japanese cinema in one of our episodes, and we discussed Rashomon extensively. But there is some way he shoots wildlife and forests. I don't know if it's a location scouting thing. I don't know if it's a compositional thing. But there are even sections in Seven Samurai where it is exquisitely atmospheric in the way each shot conveys the mood of that place. And I mean, I'm referring particularly to like a maybe a particular scene between two of the young lovers who sort of meet for the
Yes,
first time,
yes, yes.
and there's like this wide shot where both of them are separated in a frame with like these branches which feel like they are like intruding from the
Mm.
foreground almost onto them. So it's again it's I think that painterly thing makes sense when you look at such wider compositions and the way he shoots those
I
sequences. Yeah.
I think there is also the fact that the painterly background also evolves primarily also because if I'm not mistaken, Kurosawa's older brother,
Hmm.
he used to work as a silent film like
Hmm.
narrator or intertitle writer. So it's
Okay.
like there is an influence of that also
Hmm.
like intruding within Kurosawa, at least in terms of how to approach filmmaking and how to approach a storytelling device.
Sure. Yeah.
Like because even in a movie like Seven Samurai, dialogues are pretty minimal, right?
Yeah.
There aren't a
Minimal
lot
and
of dialogue.
effectively used. When they are there, they are like really well, like, they're not there for the sake of dumping exposition. And if there is exposition, it's done very smartly. Uh, I don't know if this is a dig. I've not seen MI7 Part 2, but I suppose this functions as a dig to
Hmm.
that. Yeah.
Yes.
Uh, but
No, but again, I don't think it like again, it's like the movie which we are tackling, there is a reason why
yeah.
tackling the movie is both the easiest thing to do and the hardest thing to do because the
Mm,
movie itself has become like an institution
yeah.
because of because of numerous ways it has transmuted within popular culture, how the movie has been adapted, how elements of the movie has been adapted,
Mm,
like how many times each and every section of the movie has been parodied to no end, right? And because the movie, and this is not a dig at any audience liking commercial movie or
mhm.
commercial sensibilities, because commercial sensibilities in and of itself deserves a form of simplistic substrate as a
Yeah.
delivery process.
Yeah.
For many people to actually tackle Seven Samurai, there are two questions that always stem as a result of this tackling. One is, when something is this simple, what else is there to talk about? The
Mm.
second thing is, when something has been this talked about, what else is
Good.
there to talk
Yeah.
about?
Absolutely. uh, because yeah, it's one of those films where you can go through the Wikipedia page and have like you can click on each footnote and actually have a whole thing. Like you can probably compile pages and pages and pages of stuff written about Seven Samurai, and deservedly so, because it's a film which deserves to has had such a monumental impact on
Yes.
filmmaking, Hollywood filmmaking, like and in general, like a template which I would say has been now been somewhat forgotten. I would not mind templated filmmaking if the template is this
Is
well,
this good?
but that involves taking the template and then filling it with personality. It's not to
Hmm.
do with just throwing the template onto the screen and just making us watch whatever the template is going through. You have to add your bits of personality or bits of other people's personality to it. And I think Seven Samurai, I mean, it is in the. I would like to know more, of course, from you about how it fits in the sort of Jidaegeki scheme, because there's parts of Rashomon you could also consider a Jidaegeki film, right? Because there is that
No,
involved.
no, of course it is a
Yeah,
Jidaigeki film
but it's a
through and
very
through. Like,
unconventional in a sense, because it's not
yes.
typically to do with like I guess again what is typical has been made typical because of how Seven Samurai is, like that's become the template.
Yeah,
So
which is again one of the reasons why it is so hard to actually talk about this movie because it's like
yeah,
whatever you talk about, you have seen it 1,000 times,
but
which
yeah, but
begs
I
the
think
question. Yeah,
yeah,
which
yeah,
begs
but
the question whether
but
having
I was
seen it
about
a
to
thousand times, yeah.
I was about to ask you, like, because there are, I think, a couple of films which you now there will be a like, I think this was my initial thought in Citizen Kane. Now it's not. Now I think the movie is amazing, but initially I had thought that the film has been um, copied and templatized to the extent where when you go and go back and watch the original, it itself feels a little too beholden to that template. Like it's a weird thing because we see the stuff that has released first a lot of times before we see the classics. It's classics that have inspired it, right? For example, we saw Social Network before Citizen Kane, like that, sort of like that. So it's like, because Social Network has done what Citizen Kane did, and then you go back and see Citizen Kane. When I did before, still now I do love it. Correction, but when I did go back and see it, I was the initial first time I was like, but isn't it a little too, like, you know, like that template has been worn out, it almost feels like. But that never strikes me, or even struck me the first time when I watched Seven Samurai. Like, there is that, you've seen the story 100 times, of course we have, because I mean, it started, maybe like that template started from here probably, but like we have seen it gazillions of times. But when we go back and watch it, it's still, despite the familiarity, feels so alive. Like, it doesn't feel
Alive.
rote at all. So I think that's something maybe
I
we
think
can talk about.
yeah,
Why does something like Seven Samurai endure, even if it has been templatized to such an extent? So yeah, I
mm,
guess, yeah.
primarily that is one of the reasons why I think there is an answer to both the questions that I had raised,
Hmm.
which is the which also basically posits that same question for why the Substack also exists, because it's
Hmm.
like all those movies have been talked about to death. So why am I so
Ah,
obsessed with
you, I
all these
mean,
genres, and why am I talking about this? Which is like, yeah, when the only answer one can give, and which is one of the primary reasons why movies like Megalopolis or even the auteur theory exists, which is
yeah,
because every individual has their own perspective.
yeah,
Even when you are dealing with classics,
yeah,
your perspective on those classic is what ultimately should matter.
yeah. And I
And
think they're classics because they endure
because of
across
a
time
reason,
also.
yeah, there is
Right?
a
That's the big
reason.
thing. Yeah.
That's a big thing.
Because I
And
was
classics can
thinking, sorry,
both
go
be
ahead.
good or bad. Classics can both be good or
Of
bad,
course,
because
you should be
Birth of a
absolutely
Nation.
allowed to not like
Hmm.
earlier films. There's no necessity to like.
Birth of a Nation is a classic. It's not a good film. Triumph
I
of the
mean,
Will,
well, okay.
it's a classic. It's not a good film. So you get the idea. It's like,
Yeah,
there is no way there, we don't owe any sort of overarching respect or fidelity to any
yeah,
movie,
yeah,
as much as people would like us to
absolutely.
do that. Otherwise, people like Roman Polanski should deserve respect for everything else, but he
Yeah,
doesn't.
yeah.
So, but
Absolutely. And I would say that but we have also expressed that we do like his movies. That doesn't mean we like him. I think that's it.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, and
Yeah.
and it's a similar thing that there are filmmakers who might be great filmmakers, but they have created stinkers. So
Yeah.
of course,
Of course,
it's all
everyone's
about
allowed to make mistakes in life. Come
everyone's
on.
there. Yeah, yeah. So it's like, of course, at the end of the day, it's our perspective, which is why discussion in a podcast also exists, which
I
is
think
why
we've
we
tried
are
to
going to
express that throughout the whole year. But
yes,
anyways,
discussion in a podcast also exists, and which is why we are again trying to tackle such a monumentally big thing like tackling Seven Samurai of all
yeah.
movies.
I mean,
But
we
sure,
have done we have tried to also tackle three Masaki Kobayashi films in an episode. So and not even
yes,
three, essentially seven, because
essentially seven. If we
because we
take
tackled
all of the
Quaidan.
4 5 movies of Koidan, yes,
So
essentially
yes,
seven. Yes.
yeah, so,
So, uh, because this is a Jidaegeki film, there is a reason there, like, if I'm not mistaken about Jidaegeki, I think in its basic Japanese translation means Japanese period movies.
yeah.
And the thing about most Jidaigeki movies is most of these Jidaigeki movies are usually set in the Tokugawa period or the Edo period,
Mhm,
which is the 1603 to 1868. For people who are unaware of the Tokugawa period, it's essentially when the shogun actually rises to power and Japan becomes like more like rule based, rigid in
mhm,
structure, in society, and in every other option. And when there is a singular emperor finally risen to the top,
mhm,
that is when the Edo period, and it was a veritable peacetime, somewhat quote unquote peacetime.
mhm,
So that was the Edo period. Most of these Jidaigeki films take place during this Edo period.
mhm,
Uh, Kurosawa sets Seven Samurai, however, he sets it in the Sengoku period. The Sengoku period or the Warring States period, which was during the 1540s.
Mm.
Now, this era is very fascinating because this is also an era where this is also the era in which Princess Mononoke,
Mm.
the you know the animated
Miyazaki.
movie is also set.
Mm-hmm.
Miyazaki's animated movie is also
Mm.
set. I do think one of the reasons why both Kurosawa and Miyazaki, separated by decades,
Mm-hmm.
chooses to set some of their magnum opus during
Mm.
this period is because they wanted to highlight the chaos of Japan,
Mm.
the tumultuous nature of the country during that era,
Mm.
and trying to associate it with the era in which they were filming it.
Sure.
For Kurosawa, it was during the 1950s,
Mm.
post-war.
Yeah.
For Miyazaki, it was, of course, during the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like there is always an associative nature. Like it's always both all of these movies always try to comment about history and also tries to comment about present. In a
Yeah.
in a way, Seven Samurai, I think it's very historical. It's a very
Mm-hmm.
much a historical film, even
Mm-hmm.
though it doesn't actually point you towards historical marks, and tries to be touchy winky about it.
Mm-hmm.
But there it definitely feels grounded in that specific era.
Yeah. It's not
Because
ironic in any sense, I think.
no, I think Seven Samurai is ironic in the sense that Jidaigeki's conception takes place. Jidaigeki, most of these films takes place during this peacetime. The irony
Mm.
is Kurosawa is setting those Jidaigeki movies during the period of chaos. That is one of
Sure.
the bigger irony.
Sure. And I think it's aware of what it means to be a samurai because there's a lot of jokes made on what constitutes to being a man and a samurai, I suppose, in this
I
era.
think it's also because number one, Kurosawa himself, if I'm not mistaken, and I think one can check Wikipedia also if they
Mm-hmm.
want to correct me on this. But if I'm not mistaken, he is a member of a samurai family.
Mm.
So, and his version of
Mm.
samurai family, because he was born into that samurai family, his idea about the samurai was always about nobility,
Sure.
selflessness, a form of like all these quote unquote great people honor bound by giri.
Mm-hmm.
By giri I mean duty,
Mm-hmm.
and the inclination to serve that duty,
Mm-hmm.
which is very anti quote unquote, and I don't mean to sound like some sort of an a-hole here, but
Mm.
it's very anti-American in its approach, because,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm bringing that up because Seven Samurai is one of the most adapted of all movies into
Yep.
American genres. So it's which it is very surprising to me that Seven Samurai, it is so inherently Japanese,
Mm-hmm.
and how much of its ethos doesn't get translated into American versions.
Yeah.
But there is, of course, the fact that I think Kurosawa's, because it is an action movie, it is also a movie. It's also a tragic movie. It's a movie about his love for his ancestors in a way,
Mm-hmm.
and the death of the samurai in a way,
Yeah.
because this is slowly inching towards the death of the samurai anyway. All
Yeah.
of the samurai who are being hired by the villagers are Ronin,
Yeah. Yeah, I was about to
masterless
ask
samurai.
you, aren't they Ronin? Like most of them are
They are
Ronins,
all
right? Yeah.
Ronins.
Yeah, yeah.
They are all Ronins. Because this is wartime, right?
Mm.
Clans are fighting against clans. Daimyos
Sure.
are fighting against daimyos.
Mm.
So it's either all of these samurais are in support of these daimyos, or they have walked away from these daimyos.
Sure.
They walked away from these daimyos and they don't
Because
have
there
any
is
work.
I mean, again, this sort of feeds into post World War II
Yeah,
Japan.
of course.
But there is a sense with it with most of these samurai that there is a sense of loss, a sense of despondency in them. Like it's like there is a sort of resignation to loss when you first meet them, most of them at least. That you get. Mm,
Most of the samurais during that era, like the era in which the movie is set, most of these samurais would be hired by, say, warlords like Nobunaga, because
mm-hmm,
again, this is the warring states period. The Sengoku period is the warring states period. Warlords would be hiring these samurais and to like go on massive treks on towards Korea, massive mountain, massive campaigns. Of 200,000 soldiers would be samurais would be hired to go on a massive trek to Korea to literally be slaughtered.
Hmm.
And then there are other samurais who would be forced to live by their wits and who would have to look for any means of survival.
Hmm.
And in that way, it's like, and then you have Kurosawa here, who is again highlighting the inherent nobility and selflessness of these samurai and
Yeah.
contrasting them with the villagers who are inherently very selfish, who are
Yeah.
inherently looking after their own ends,
Hmm.
and which could be interpreted very differently in very, very, very different ways. But I think we are getting ahead of ourselves because we haven't talked about what the plot of Seven Samurais anyway.
Do we
So
need to? What is the plot of the seven? What is the plot of Seven Samurai, Amartya? Can you sum it up for me?
I think it's the deceptively one of the simplest plots ever.
Yeah.
It's like a village is being attacked regularly by bandits.
Yeah.
The villagers worried about their crops, the women in their house and everything. The villagers decide to hire samurais to protect them and train them to protect themselves from those
And pay them by
robbers
by
and pay
serving
them
them
by
food, essentially.
serving them food.
Yeah.
Yes. This is the simplest example, but
Yeah.
this is the simplest layer of it all. But within
Yeah.
those layers are so many different
Of
points of
course.
view and
Yeah.
perspectives.
Yeah.
Again, I think I've talked a lot. I think I would like to ask you about the plots and what do you think of are the themes that Kurosawa is trying to capture within all of
I
this?
think in general, I think there's we were talking just before we started recording about how the director of In the Realm of the Senses, Amartya told me that the director of In the Realm of the Senses, another film we've talked
Nagisa
about,
Oshima.
Nagisa
Yes.
Oshiba, said like that Kurosawa sort of yearns for a sort of simplistic humanism or something like
Humanism.
that.
Yes.
Which doesn't strike me to be the case much at all in something like Seven Samurai, simply because I think, as you said, like the plot, the upper layer is deceptively simple. But within that, you have these tensions that are existing between the farmers and the samurai, and which is sort of manifested most perfectly actually in the Toshiro Mifune character, which is Kikidio, right? I think that's the whole
Kikuchiyo. Yes.
Kikuchiyo. Sorry, I have read my CH as D, so that clearly tells you how wonderful my handwriting is. But Toshiro Mifune's character, I think, which I think is very much a staple now, you'll find in a lot of films as quote unquote comic
The
relief.
wild card. The
Yeah,
wild
and
card or the
yeah,
comic
some
relief.
so somewhat of a comic relief also. Like he'll just diffuse the tension whenever an action scene or something serious is happening. In the case of Marvel, will essentially butcher anything serious that is happening in a film. So it's one of
And
those.
all the characters are essentially versions of Kikuchiyo by way of Robert Downey Jr. So you get the idea.
Exactly. Yeah, he's not that fast talking as Robert Downey Jr. But yes,
Yes.
he's chaotic. He's never. He's essentially the opposite of any samurai around him, because he feels like he's gonna burst into dance or energy or movement at any given position and place and time.
He's the middle ground. He's the
Yeah,
middle ground, right? He's the middle
yeah.
ground between the villagers and the samurai.
I
He's
mean,
a
that
villager
turns
who
out to be the
wants to
case,
be
I
a
think, which
samurai.
is the
Yeah.
brilliant thing, I think, and sort of punctures any argument which you talk about sort of simplistic humanism. I think that comes into talking about Seven Samurai, because I think a simplistic film would not bother with making a character in which it complicates what it means to be a samurai or a farmer. You'll have a good dynamic, because I forgot this when I first saw the film, but you barely see the villains actually. The villains have absolutely nothing to do in this. Like
Yeah, the villagers they have no personality. The villagers have
no,
like the
not the
villains.
villagers,
Villains have
the
the
villains.
villains.
Sorry, the bandits are
Sorry, the
just
villains.
bandits are just like
The
like
external
Germans in
stimuli.
Dunkirk, if that's
Yeah.
like a sort of like that.
So
Running
bandits are
with
the external stimuli. That's exactly what
exactly,
they're.
exactly. Like they are the threat that is being imposed, but like we barely see them. But
The
yeah,
Chitauri in the Avengers. The Chitauri in the
sure.
Avengers. If
But
you,
the thing is then the film is 3 hours 30 minutes. So what do you spend the 3 hours 30 minutes with? Because there is no like cutaways from the central group to then go to the villains,
the
right? So you're
bandits.
yeah, you're
Yeah.
not getting overly plot oriented. This is that, and this, like the bandits are like you don't see the bandits scheming or doing anything. So
The
it's
bandits are not humanized. The bandits are not given
which is
three-dimensional.
fine. Like like if that is the sort of simplicity that is being critiqued, then sure. But I mean, this is
I don't think I
archetypical
don't
in a
think
way which
I don't think the bandits need any simplicity, because if we look at it very carefully, the bandits are also Ronin. The
sure,
samurais are also
exactly,
Ronin.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
There's a dark mirror working here anyway.
Exactly, and that is revealed in any case in I think one of the final scenes of the film where Kikichio, who in general is very is parodic almost in a lot of, and his performance is fantastic, Mifune's. But in that one scene, he just absolutely drives a spear through any sort of simplicity in that samurai is good, villagers bad. This, like it's he was a villager and he was traumatized by samurais, and now he wants to be a samurai and sort of wants to achieve something of a middle ground between those two. And I think in that particular instance, in that particular character, I think for me is emblematic of a lot of the film. Like there is just a middle ground in the best possible sense. Like there's no like butting against things. Like it's not like comedy is butting against action. It's like everything is working in synthesis. Like it's every like a Kikichio will have a Kambai Shimada but played by Takashi Shimura. I think he's
Shimura,
in
the great
Kiru
Takashi
also.
Shimura.
The great
He's
I
in
think right
he's in almost every
Kurosawa.
Japanese movie you have
Yeah,
seen.
okay, okay. So no, but so you'll have this whole the one character who's like extremely quiet, extremely stubborn, like stubborn, not stoic, not stubborn. And then you'll have actually two, three of them who are like that. But then you'll also have two, three who are vulnerable and like it's again the clash of opposites done in the best possible way, where that working together only is the possible way in which these two will solve the problem, as opposed to you feeling like this is a tonal disaster, which often happens,
Which
in a
often
lot of
happens, yes.
yeah. So
I
yeah, I
think
mean,
it's also the reason why that long runtime actually helps. But
yeah,
again,
you had
it
said
long
you wanted to
runtime
say how the long run time justify. I
the
didn't
long
feel the run time, to be very honest. So yeah.
the long runtime, there is a narrative justification for that long runtime, in that Kurosawa is trying to show agriculture as a way of life for
Mm,
many of these people, especially during the Sengoku period, which would again become the same case during the 1950s, where agriculture was in a way one of the primary economic like source of income before Japan's economic boom suddenly, like it will like skyrocket
mm-hmm,
later on. Before that, agriculture was still a big thing, which is
mm,
one of the primary reasons why Seven Samurai was very relatable when it had come out. So
mm,
it's like there is also the fact that the movie can be divided by the agricultural processes. Like the
mm-hmm,
second half begins when the harvest begins.
mm,
So it's like there is a reason why the movie is that long, because
sure.
the bandits have a specific reason for attacking
Yeah.
them. They want the
And then it's also
crops.
divided into a much more basic thing, but divided into setup, conflict, and payoff. Like,
Yeah,
it's
of course, of
yeah, so
course.
it's like the setup takes its time, which I think every film should have a setup which takes its time. Because you take the time here to see them recruit their whole team. And recruiting the whole team is
Time
needed.
consuming.
Yeah, and needed because you have to care about these people later on. And you
And
get each of them registered. It's not like you forget about any one of them. Like it's this
there
whole
are
thing
so
where.
many things, there are so many instances within this movie that would be replicated over and over and
Mm,
over. There is a storytelling playbook where
mm-hmm,
one character is introduced into the movie, where one character is introduced into a movie doing a completely separate heroic act, which
Yes.
introduces the character, which makes you realize what the character is all about.
Yeah.
Takashi Shimura's Kanbei is introduced as cutting his
Yes.
top knot, essentially foregoing the quote unquote samurai way, but it
Yeah.
turns out to be a ruse
Yeah.
in which he tries to save a kid.
Yeah.
And how he saves that kid, and that is how both the audience as well as the villagers and Kikuchiyo realize the
Yeah.
greatness of the samurai and realize that he's the hero upon whom we can follow.
Sure. Yeah. And again,
So
that's a great, like, that sets his character. But then with Kikuchiyo, you'll get like this unassuming. He just bounces around and comes into the
yes,
frame,
yes.
and then
And it's like
later on he becomes a central
and
part, right? I think
Kambe,
it's one of the, yeah.
yes, yes. And Kambe's introduction is like so much replicated over and over. It's replicated in a
Mm,
James Bond movie. It's replicated in Mission Impossible. It's
yeah.
replicated in any and all team movies you can actually think of. It's
Yeah.
replicated in Ocean's 11.
Yeah.
It
Like
anywhere you go.
it's the extra, like his extra, like, side stories, main action,
Main
essentially, right?
action.
Like that
Yeah.
that needs to be established. Apparently he spent like the longest time with his co-writers, Shindu Hashimoto and Hideo Ogu. I need to I need to write in block letters. I think I can't read my own handwriting. Anyways, he apparently developed a whole backstory for not only the seven samurais, but like everyone in the villagers was sort of
Yes.
told to have like their whole extensive family trees and everything was developed, right? I think so that helps though, because I think then it sort of
I
serves
think it
into
is necessary. I think it is
yeah,
necessary in a way, like even if you don't show it explicitly within the movie, I think
yeah,
preparation or in telling a backstory
mm,
actually gets illuminated within the movie itself to the viewers
mm,
also, because again camera doesn't lie, right?
yeah,
Any actor who is acting out any event,
yeah,
if he thinks that a character has a backstory,
yeah.
it is going to be shown whether or not he can help it.
I mean,
So it's like,
you know I told you, right, when I was watching it the first time, because this directly links to your point, which is I sort of butted in here, was um, I remembered the strangely still and haunting moments from Seven Samurai, and the one moment I
yes,
did remember was, and this I only realized that it's such a tertiary character and she has barely anything to do apart from that, is the woman who's the wife of a
yes,
villager, and she
Mozuke,
wakes up
yes,
in
yes,
a
yes,
morning, and then she sees, I think, him and a bunch of people coming down to burn. I think the
yes.
bandits have taken her and, like, I think,
Yeah, yeah. She is
assaulted, raped, and
She is Mozuke's wife. She's
yeah,
Mozuke's wife. Yeah.
yeah, and she
And the
realizes, and the score in that moment is unlike at any moment in the other film. Like, it literally turns almost into a horror movie for like 2 seconds, and I was just like, it's chilling. It's like you have no idea about these characters apart from this one instance, but that one scene in which you see what happens when, some, like, the wife is confronted with her husband, but years later, or how many ever, we don't know that actually, but you just, through the expressions, through like this terror almost, it's like what has happened, like, he's seen me in this state almost, yeah, so like that sort of stuff is what I remembered when even I saw it, like, what, 10 15 years 10 years before I rewatched it, but I had like that image in my head for some reason. I forgot that actually leads to a even more horror image of her running into the house
yes,
later
yes,
on.
yes.
So, it's one of those things where yeah, it's
Again,
that stuff.
in the hands of I think many filmmakers, it would have caused a tonal dissonance.
Yeah,
In in the hands of Kurosawa, it becomes like part of the flow,
yeah,
a very horrifying flow, but it's still
yeah.
part of a flow.
Yeah.
It just
Because the
moves
world in
forward.
which they are living is very harsh. Like, there is no, I
Yes.
think, denying that. Like, I think there
I
is no
think the
soft
joy is
peddling
also
of that. Hmm.
I think the joy also stems from, I think their joy, those are also like stemming from the simpler moments, stemming
Hmm.
from nostalgia, stemming from like a world that they had left. Again,
Hmm.
it's within those samurais, right? Like Kambe's friendship with
Hmm.
Gorobe or
Hmm.
with Shichiroji. These two characters,
Yeah.
like Gorobe and Kambe are like joined at the hip immediately after they meet. They find
Hmm.
themselves so much in sync with each other.
Yeah.
And then Shichiroji and Kambe share a shorthand because they had been at
Hmm.
war together. So it's
Yes.
like they don't talk much together,
Hmm.
but when they do, like they understand each other very easily.
Yeah.
So I think those little moments of joy
Yeah.
is
And
one of
then
the
there's this whole sub uh, plot running through it between the youngest samurai who wants to be a samurai and who's being trained.
Katsushiro. Katsushiro,
Yes.
yeah.
And his admiration for Kyozo, I think
Kyozu. Yeah.
most stoic, the least sort of showy, the
The
exact
badass.
opposite of Kikichiro,
The
essentially.
badass. The
Yeah, yeah,
badass. The
yeah,
badass.
yeah.
Yeah. Essentially the badass.
Yeah, exactly. But I think
Hmm.
there's this whole thing about going on between Kyozo being a mentor slash parent actually to this child, because there's I again the other moment I remembered was him very calmly looking at him sort of greeting another woman, one of the women who the villagers have hidden as a
Hmm.
woman, because they fear that when the samurai come they'll quote unquote. One thing might have not aged well is maybe the portrayal of women in the film, but
Might have not. It hasn't. It's like, I think one
no,
of the
but
biggest.
I think there's a slight, well, not slight, but there is a turn or like twist towards the end in how things are resolved with that character and the woman.
Yes.
I think which
Yes.
sort
Yes.
of mitigates some of it, but like
Hmm.
yeah, they are fairly. But again, I don't want to like
Fairly
impose that as a
unidimensional.
yeah, which
Fairly unidimensional.
yeah, they are someone who needs to be. I think this is a Western thing, like a very classic Western thing, right? This got revisionist later on. I think
Hmm.
in
It's
fifties
not
with
even I don't think it's even classic Western. I think it's a issue. I think even Japanese critics had talked about it with
sure,
Seven Samurai. So
but I think that's
yeah,
because is it because it was playing in conjunction with like Gendai Geki films of that
maybe,
time?
yeah,
Okay,
because it is also like a home drama, right? Like the
yeah,
Obuncho movies. It's like a home drama movies or the Obuncho movies. More
yeah,
importantly, it's playing with an Osu movie or a Mizoguchi movie,
sure. Hmm.
where the
Yeah, they
women
were
characters,
Mizoguchi to made like
yeah,
women oriented films actually. So
yeah.
yeah, I
So
think it
in
made
that
sense.
context, this does stand
Sure,
out very much, and
set in a
especially with
different period.
regards, yeah,
I
and
mean,
no,
I'm
and
like,
it's
yeah,
no, it's also because like Kurosawa like tried to make a stronger female character based movie a couple of I think immediately the year preceding it, and I don't think it turned out very well.
okay,
So again, I am not very sure about the name of that movie. I'm sure about the name of the protagonist. The protagonist's name was Yukie, but I don't
okay,
remember the name of the movie. It's very
okay,
weird.
okay.
But yeah, and it's also like I read somewhere ki,
Hmm.
Kazuo, the badass, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the sexuality of the women, quote unquote, the sexuality of the women is
Hmm.
one of the primary, is something that the samurais are trying to abstain themselves of.
Yeah,
And
because these guys fear
Kazuo,
that the villagers also fear that, right?
the
That
villages,
yeah.
I think there is the class rigidity which is always there
Mm-hmm.
within the service, right?
Yeah,
That how can a villager and a samurai, how can a villager's daughter and the samurai
yeah,
stay together?
yeah,
And that is not broken at all, which
yeah.
which could be which can be interpreted somewhat rightly so as being like somewhat problematic for any other
I
case.
think it's treated as a tragedy, though, right? In the film.
For Kurosawa it is a tragedy in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Because the
Kurosawa
because
it is
the
a
because the
tragedy.
finale of the film, which again unforgettable, very much so. Like I've like
Hmm.
the image of the swords inside like the sand dunes,
Yes, yes,
essentially,
yes.
with the score playing the score, which is also iconic. Uh,
Iconic score, yeah.
yeah, and referenced a gazillion times in Isle of Dogs, of all things. Yeah, because that's his Akira Kurosawa movie, like Darjeeling
Yes,
Limited
yes.
is his Satyajit
His
Ray
Ray
movie.
movie.
So
Yeah.
yeah, this is not a we like Wes Anderson, by the way. This is not a dig at him.
Yes, yes.
So no, I think just generally this there's nothing victorious about that finale to me.
No, no.
So there's a definite tragedy just like a humanist tragedy, but also a tragedy in that particular relationship, where I think, and I don't know, I don't know Chris has seen it or not, but I would think Chris would probably bring a queer lens to that youngest character, because there is something, especially in the way he shot, a couple of times the way he looks at the swordsman,
I think
Kyuzo.
I th no, I think
Kazuo.
Kazuo, I think
Huh. Hmm.
Kyuzo's relationship with Katsushiro. I think Katsushiro looks at him with awe more
Yeah,
than anything else. I don't
yeah.
think there is a attraction, quote unquote. I think it's more of a
No, no,
massive
no.
sense of
I'm sure there's. I'm just saying there's a reading someone can make of it. I'm just saying
of course.
the text is open enough to make
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
reading. I'm not saying
I
that
think
it's
even
there,
Kiku,
but yeah,
I think even Kikuchiro, I think even Kikuchiro is in awe of Kyuzo, which is one of the
yeah.
reasons why
Because he
when
tries
Katsushiro is
to,
talk, yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
When he's talking, when Katsushiro is talking about Kyozo,
yeah.
Kikuchio is pretending not to listen, but he is
He
listening.
does the same thing, but then causes a total ruckus essentially because
Causes
he's
a total
not him.
ruckus. Yeah, yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
but there's but yeah, I think there's just so much. Again, I think we always come back to this point in some ways, and this sort of is a universal point. But
There is a reading here which is fascinating reading
hmm,
that because the samurais are abstaining it,
yeah,
like when Kazuo actually sees Shino, the woman,
hmm,
or any of the other women,
hmm,
he goes outside at night to train and
hmm.
the rain is pouring down. Okay.
Oh,
And he's
okay.
training. So it's their definition of a cold shower. And I'm like,
Ah, okay. Listen again. See, there's that's how you. But that I think the greatness or like the appeal of a film would be if someone says that, not to sneer at it, but be like,
hmm,
oh, that's very interesting. Because I did think of it, but it can totally make sense within the thematics or like the world of the film, because the world of the film is such, and it doesn't invite that sexual or reading, but I feel if people are willing to go there, then sure, they were willing to go there at night. So
yes.
whatever. Uh,
But
anyways, the
again,
hmm,
I think one of the primary reasons why Seven Samurai as a movie more than justifies its runtime is because even as the samurais are being hired by
yeah,
the villagers don't look at them with any sense of trust, right?
yeah.
And there is always a sense of like,
There's
how do I
that
put
whole
this? Like,
subplot with the food, like how they hide the food, the villagers, and how they're
hmm,
actually they take it out the night before everything, like the
yes, yes.
final battle is about to happen, and it's essentially, yeah. There's a whole lot of mistrust between the people. There's a lot. It's not like all hunky dory at all
it's
between.
it's it both sets up a very dynamic relationship status
Yeah,
between the villagers and the samurai, which is always changing because it's
yeah,
like the villagers are selfish. We learned that very quickly.
yeah,
The samurais are objective and in a way selfless because they are strategically thinking that they would have to sacrifice two or three houses
yeah,
but to save the villagers,
mm,
right? And they have to teach the villagers the samurai code of conduct, like
yeah,
each and every time. One of the reasons why Kambe always chastises Kikuchio, especially when Kikuchio runs off to get the gun and works
mm,
back, Kambe's first instruction is, why did you leave your post? It's like
yeah,
they are teaching him that warfare requires like synchronicity, warfare
yeah,
requires planning, warfare requires selflessness and trust between everybody, not
yeah,
selfishness and just like worrying about oneself,
mm,
which is fascinating, which is what the samurais are trying to do. And the villagers listen for a very temporary period of time before they go back to their own ways. And
yeah. Absolutely. I
again,
mean, but that's the whole. But that's how you do like this sort of template, though, because within that template of good versus bad, you have
hmm,
another layer of good versus good, also having like a battle, like in the villagers and the samurai are both good, essentially, versus in relative to that bad
I
force.
also think it, yeah, I also think this movie also works as some sort of a like a ode
Mm,
to a version of nobility or a version of a class of people
mm,
whose classes just died out due
sure.
to a war.
Mm,
It's like societal flaws
yeah.
destroyed their classical flaws. It's like
Yeah.
their logic a samurai cannot work unless under a daimyo is a basic flaw that is again working for Kambe, because he has to
Yeah,
work for these villagers who are only giving him food. And
yeah,
why does he have to work? Because there are no daimyos left.
yeah,
Like there are no daimyos left to hire him, and he will have
mm,
to eat to survive.
yeah,
So there is a basic flaw here, and he
yeah,
can't let go of the honor and the samurai code of conduct.
yeah. Yeah. And I mean, there's again that fatalism at the end, that this is their victory,
Hmm.
that this is nothing is ours essentially,
The
is a
Pyrrhic
sort
victory.
of, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
The Pyrrhic victory.
Pyrrhic
Yeah.
victory. Yeah, absolutely. So I think that again informed a lot of. I know that Rashomon had like that Hollywood fake ending,
Yes.
except because the other whole film is so cynical and
Hmm.
so full of mistrust and pessimism, that it's interesting for this film not to, again, a simple film would end
Hmm.
in unison of the samurai and villagers celebrating the victory together, of them possibly getting married, the young couple. But it's,
According to many critics, they actually said that in reality, Kikuchio, like Katsushiro, would have actually kept Shino as a mistress. Like
okay,
the young guy would have actually kept Shino as a mistress.
okay.
Kambe would have become a feudal lord of the village. That's what it would have been in reality. But again, that basically upends Kurosawa's entire intention of it
Hmm.
being an ode to a class of people who he actually belongs to. Like,
But really, they thought they would have done that, considering the way Kambe is established. It doesn't seem
yes,
like that.
exactly.
This feels more like the natural conclusion to the story, as
Hmm.
opposed to what people, I suppose, the reality of it all, I suppose. But I would say in reality, Kambe would never take it if he had intentions of being a feudal lord. I never thought he'd take the job itself. It's one of those things. So I
Yeah,
suppose
yeah, yeah,
it's,
of
yeah,
course. But again, it's again the point of watching a movie are the different readings, right?
yeah,
Otherwise, like differing of opinions, it's
yeah.
exactly how you are choosing to articulate and how
Hmm.
far off the mark are you and how real to the mark are you. One
Hmm.
of the primary reasons why Kurosawa hated film critics is because he felt that film critics actually voice their own thought points and tells that
What
Kurosawa
they
maybe thought
wanted.
of it like and tells that Kurosawa thought of it like that. And
Sure,
Kurosawa's point of view was like, I never thought of it like that. When I was shooting the film, I wasn't thinking like that at all. And I'm
sure.
like, most filmmakers' problems. That definitely is the case here. Like,
Well, that's fine. I mean, but I mean,
yeah,
what can
yeah.
we say? We are a bunch of film critics talking.
We are a creature of fickle minds. We like
I hope
watching
we are
movies
not.
and like
Yeah,
analyzing.
I think it's more of a, for at least for me or us. It's always been more of a what we got out of it, as opposed to what he was doing. I think that's the
Yes.
whole. How can we say, we are not in the business of predicting what he did. I think it's more of whatever he did. This is the intended effect it had. This is what we can
Yes.
say, right? So yeah.
Which is one
So
of the reasons why even bad movies like Ishtar has audiences, right? Because they connected with people.
yeah, yeah,
Heaven's
absolutely.
Heaven's Gate, Heaven's Gate
Heaven's Gate is a
being
good
such a
movie. Yeah,
it's a very good movie, but being such a massive financial disaster put a
yeah,
stain on the movie's historical perspective. But
yeah.
again,
Yeah,
it
that
is what
movie
it is.
is very, very cynical. So that movie is,
Yes, yes.
but very good movie if anyone's into 4 hour westerns, which sort of links up well with this, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean,
But
I mean, if you are going to watch a 3.5 hour like
it's got an
Chanbara,
intermission. This has. So
even this has, yes, even
yeah,
this has an intermission.
good
It's like a 5 minute
intermission.
intermission, 5 minute
Yeah.
intermission, full
And
on,
a
yeah.
good intermission point. It's not like not like India where it's slapped on anywhere in like for Hollywood movies. Like it's not.
I think there's a basic flaw in that most of these Hollywood movies don't actually account for intermission
Yeah,
unless
yeah. This
they're
was built according to that. No, I think it was like
yeah,
the
yes.
film needs to peak there, and then it needs to sort of again have a,
Maybe James Cameron needs to think that the next time he makes a
please
three
do,
and a 3 hour
please
long
do.
Avatar movie, please put an
Because I
intermission.
think we are beyond the point where he's not going to make it. So if you are going to make it, James Cameron, please make sure we have two intermissions, not just one. I need both. Otherwise, I'll have to walk outside while the film is while watching the film, which I did last time for 5 minutes. But I don't like doing that. So
Yes.
yeah. Anyways,
But of course, I think any discussion about Seven Samurai would be incomplete without Kurosawa's staging.
yeah.
Like the blocking in this movie,
Oh, it's incredible. Absolutely incredible.
incredible, incredible. Like
Like
how
you
he's
again, it's one of
framing.
those you can turn the volume off and watch it. It's a film school
Yes,
essentially for you. You should do
essentially.
that actually if you're into like film form at
How
all.
he's using how
Yeah.
he's using deep focus,
Yeah.
how he's using deep focus, how he's using shallow focus,
Yeah.
how he's using the foreground and the background. Take one scene, see how the samurais are arranged in a single frame.
Yeah.
You will understand the relationship
Between
immediately.
each
There
other.
is
I
between
think
each other.
I think High and Low also has this essay, I think, or a video essay online about how Kurosawa does blocking. I think that combined with sort of, it's a bit like the Hitchcock thing where I'm like, just, they are film schools in and of themselves. You will
Yes.
watch them on silent and you'll kind of just get an idea of how to visually orchestrate stuff. And I just wanted to also mention this is one of the first times I think he used multiple camera setups, right? Because that was a
Yes,
big
yes.
that this was the big thing about that, and how because of that then the editing for him became easier and everything. But the
It's
way I
also
will
because Kurosawa was like John Ford, right? It's
Yep,
almost like he had the movie in his head, like he was editing
sure,
on the fly even.
yeah,
So it's like,
he's credited as the sole editor, so yeah.
yeah,
No, but I think I wanted, because I was particularly looking at the at how he stages action in this,
yes.
just because I was
The end.
curious because I forgot again. It's one of those things where I've seen the movie, so I knew what happens. So your attention goes a little bit to the making also. The number of times it's very classical but done so terrifically, like establishing the location and shot, of course, with a wide, and then
Hmm.
sort of going in close and close and close. But I think the best thing which I thought was, and this is something that fin- Fincher does with some of his work, with most of his work, where
I think in Indian context, I think even Rajamouli does the same thing in a
sure.
way.
So it's like the action. No, but then what was happening in Seven Samurai was you had this sort of like wide establishing shot,
Mhm.
but then when the action had to be shown, and because it had to also be covered, because you can't show extreme violence, possibly also because of like censorship
Censoring.
maybe, but also just technicalities, how do
Purely
you
based
show. E-
technically. Yeah.
exactly. But the way it's done is that uh, it's the rhythm, like it's between the establishing shot and the close up, and the
Yes.
way, and the camera is always so dynamic when it's following
It's
them in
Eisenstein.
close up.
It's
It's like
Eisensteinian.
terrific.
It's
Hmm?
Eisensteinian. The
Yeah, yeah,
editing is
yeah. The way
Eisensteinian.
it's flipping between both of them, right? Like, and
He's he's shooting Kambe, shooting an arrow,
yeah,
and the immediate cut is the
yeah,
arrow hitting the person. You
yeah,
don't see the arrow flying. You
yes,
don't see it actually hitting. It's all implied, but it's
yeah,
done within a fraction of a second.
yeah.
Like
It's like the
he's
great
following
use
Eisenstein.
of, yeah. So I think this is what I was like. I mean, this is the sort of action I guess I like. I don't know, like I guess it's a bit dated for some people now, but I don't know. It's just it's making use of your
The
tools,
basic
I think.
the basic way to shoot action is ensure that the audience is following your eyesight.
Yeah,
Like
and
audience is
but then also you need them to be immersed in it, which I think sometimes the long take thing just
breaks your emotion.
breaks it,
Yeah.
because then you're just noticing technique, and then that, because that's become such a trend. That's the antithesis to the cut, which
Hmm,
has
hmm, hmm.
its place if you do it well, but
Hmm.
it gets nauseating sometimes. But
One of the and it's also and the other option is to hold a master shot and then just show the stunt work, which
yeah.
works in some cases,
Oh yeah, the
but
stunt work needs to be amazing, which it is in some cases. So it's
yes.
Raid, I think,
I
is
mean,
the an example I can.
I
But
mean, if you think about the fact that he wrangled so many horses here and how many of those people
yeah,
and how the action scene is done. And again, it's that Eisensteinian mode of editing, right?
Mm.
A horse comes, a villager attacks, you see the guy fall, you don't
Mm.
see how the attack is going, you don't see the details of the attack.
Yeah.
If you look at it in the modern context of the I call it the Olivier Megaton or the Luc Besson school of filmmaking,
Yeah.
where there will be 30 cuts within a second
Yeah.
of of a spear going, then spear's end being shown, then it hitting the armor, then the spear breaking through the armor. All of these shots would be done in 30,
Also,
all
yeah,
taken in 30
and
shots.
also one of the other things I'm surprised I didn't mention it because it's a pet peeve of mine.
Yes,
No score. In a lot of the action sequences, no score. And I was just like,
yes.
you know, at this point, I'm just going to say that people who don't use score in these sequences are just very confident filmmakers. Because, or just
I
know, it's the natural, like the nature is
it's the
such a big
cons
thing, right?
it's the confidence of shooting an action sequence and just letting the chaos guide you.
Yeah,
Just
absolutely.
letting the chaos of the environment guide you, which is
And
one of
he
the
could have
reasons.
used a lot of music because the music, when
Of
it plays,
course.
it's terrific in it. It's not like
Sad.
it's, yeah.
I mean, if you look at any of the Seven Samurai adaptations, I include China Gate here. If any of the Seven Samurai adaptations, you will see how music is used. So it's like, again,
No, but I think
and
that's the, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
no, and again, it's like the Obuncho narrative, like the home movie melodrama,
Hmm.
along with the Jidaegeki version. There is such a tonal balance here. Like it could have toppled at any second.
Yeah.
Mifune's performance could have toppled at any second.
I messaged you saying that this performance is so on
Yeah,
the ropes that
yeah,
if it doesn't if that balance isn't struck because the other people aren't there with him, I would
hmm,
find it like very uncomfortable
obnoxious.
throughout.
Yeah.
Because this happened with me in I recently watched Last Tango in Paris with Marlon Brando. I was
Oh
just
yeah.
like, oh
Oh yeah.
God, like this is the whole what people say about acting pills, and I'm like, just stop. Like just so much acting and acting. I'm like, it's like you watching someone do an acting class on screen. I'm just
Yes.
like, I can't. Like just be a person. Like be someone normal. Like I don't want to learn. I don't want to see you rehearse on unless of course it's a meta thing, but it's not in that film. Anyways, flawed film. But point is that the performativity you can even notice in a smidgen. But then the thing is that he humanizes that character also, and the way he humanizes
Yes.
him makes it totally believable and makes his performance and performativity actually even more believable because then you understand that a lot of times it's that uncontrollable sort of angst
Uh,
almost is like bursting out
Again,
just
it's like
to
Yeah,
overcompensate.
it's Kikuchiyo's performativity is primarily because he wants to be a samurai, but he can't shed off his
Yeah,
village ways, which is one of the
yeah.
reasons why when he's in the harvest, he shouts, "Oh my God, there are so many women here," which is
Yes.
like, yes, which is like a, a reaction that could be classified as normal, which the villagers kind of are, and which the samurais decidedly are not for the villagers' perspective, right?
Yeah.
So for the villagers, that's how they react. And Kikuchiyo being so animalistic in a way.
Yeah.
And again, it's like I don't know whether it's Kurosawa's way of assigning each character with an animal or it's a Mifune's
Mm.
version of like associating each character with an animal, but it's like his Rashomon performance and his this performance is like
Yeah.
so over the top in a carnivorous way. It's
What
like
about
it's all
I've still not seen Throne of Blood. What about that?
oh yeah,
Isn't
Throne
that
of Blood
theatrical?
too. Very theatrical.
But he's very good at underplaying also because I
Yeah.
saw both in
Hi-
I always say
High and
Straw
low,
Dogs
the
for some
bats.
reason. Stray Dog.
High and low, the bat sleep well, stray dog. He's
Yeah.
underplaying to the hilt.
Yeah, even
He's
in
un
Samurai Rebellion, he's underplaying a little bit
Yeah, yeah,
with
yeah,
the Masaki Kobayashi
yeah.
film. Yeah.
But again,
So,
it's very fascinating to me that Kurosawa, who was known to be a perfectionist,
mm,
the only guy he gave free rein to every time was Mifune.
yeah.
And I'm like, where do you get so much trust from this guy who
But
you
I think
know?
it's that whole thing, right? Like, it's weird. I referenced now because you mentioned this. I referenced Wes Anderson, and now that comparison strikes me completely because you're talking about like the perfectionism, right? And how everything, and then you introduce one like live wire out of control person in that environment, and then he
Hmm.
like almost he also actually in a way breaks the hermetically sealed nature of the perfectionism. You kind of just break through any barrier, and it feels like you're
Hmm.
just in this. That's why I think he shoots him so much in, like, he's given the most amount of single shots, I think. Otherwise, like, a
Yes.
lot of the characters are in like groups, and of course it's to demonstrate that dynamic also, because he is the isolated one compared to the others
Hmm.
who are quote unquote samurais already,
Hmm.
right? So yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, again, I would love to next time
Hmm.
silent watch of Seven Samurais happening, just for looking at the visual language, I think.
I
Uh,
also read up somewhere. I think I read up in the John Mellon book only
yeah,
about Seven Samurai, the BFI classic
who's
book.
very salty about everyone who doesn't like it, right?
Who is very salty about everyone who doesn't like it. She
Rightfully so,
doesn't
I
care.
would say.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah, yeah. She doesn't care about quote unquote famous filmmakers also. Like she literally shaded Nagisa Oshima like anything.
I mean, to be honest, I can understand him. It's like it's essentially like Gaspar Noé critiquing Steven Spielberg's movies. I'm like, of course, like, it's one
Why?
of those things.
Why? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? What's the point?
It's like, yeah, it's like saying that Steven Spielberg will like a Gaspar Noé film. It's one of those things.
We don't know. Maybe
Probably
he
does,
does.
actually. Which
Maybe he
sad,
does.
sad thought.
Yeah.
I mean, his wife likes his films, which is another sad thought because his wife's super talented. Anyways, go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah,
And it's also the fact that how do you like how are you going to like you cannot remake Seven Samurai, right? Like
yeah.
faithful remake you cannot do.
Hmm.
And at this point it has been remade into so many things officially or unofficially. Like the Avengers is a remake of Seven Samurai.
Yeah,
Very basically, just think
yeah.
about it. You have to
Of course, yeah,
protect the world against an alien invasion. You have to recruit a team.
yeah.
Who is the
You
wild
just take
card in that?
7, 8 movies doing that as
Yeah.
opposed
Yeah.
to.
Yeah. Who is
One.
the wild card? Who is the wild card in that Avengers movie? Everybody is a wild card in that movie. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, they're all very.
Okay,
Who is the sincerest is the other question actually in that, because
I think
everyone else is
Evans.
smarmy, smart talking.
I think Evans. Evans. I think Chris
Evans, yes,
Evans is
Evans
there.
is the
Yeah.
straight man. Yeah,
And Ruffalo somewhat.
he's
Ruffalo
but he's
somewhat.
always mad. So
Yes,
yeah,
yes, yes. But again, the Avengers is Seven Samurai. The Ocean's movies are Seven Samurai.
mm.
It's like, and that's not even counting the direct adaptations, like the Hindi movie China Gate,
Magnificent.
which is
Oh, have
or
you actually
Magnificence.
seen China Gate?
I have seen China Gate.
Who
Or
all is in it?
Magnificent.
I forgot.
A lot of character actors, including Amrish Puri and a lot of other people. Yeah,
Wow.
it's a very weird cast.
I mean, Amrish
And
Puri's done his share of Hollywood also. He's done Temple of
yeah.
Doom. So, right.
And of course, Magnificent Seven with John Mellon hates with a passion. It's like, oh my
The
God.
60s, 70s one or the later one?
The 60s one, see the
Okay,
60s
okay.
one. She hates it with a passion. She's like, John Sturges doesn't understand anything about Seven Samurai. How the hell did he actually transmute it?
Well,
I'm
then
like,
I'm glad she didn't see Antoine
the new
Fuqua's
one.
version.
I'm
So,
like,
yeah.
lady.
But how do you
Again,
not talk about, like, again, if you're writing a book passionately about a film, if people like trample over it with films which don't understand the spirit of it, then yeah, I guess that anger or like
I think
annoyance or
one of
something.
our perspectives is actually right in that the translation of a very Japanese text like Seven Samurai into a very
Hmm.
American Western text like Magnificent
Hmm.
Seven does leave a lot to be desired,
Hmm.
especially when American Western like a Magnificent Seven always talks about the cowboys and the gunslingers being
Hmm.
the people of the Wild West were looking for a sort of freedom.
Yeah.
And equating that with the samurais whose like descent into Roninhood was a result not of their search for any sort of American freedom, but
Hmm.
it was because of their like entire social class being decimated due to societal upheaval.
Sure. Yeah.
That is a very different context overall,
Yeah.
which is why the dynamics between the villagers and the samurais are so contentious in Seven
Sure.
Samurai.
Yeah.
and the contention
I
between
don't even
the
remember the dynamic between villagers in Magnificent Seven, between the villagers and the
it's
Mag Seven.
basically it's basically a similar form of thingy, but
Sure,
of course you can't compute like
sure. But
two
it
of them.
suits the Jedi more, I feel, in that sense then. In
Yeah,
Star Wars, right?
in a way, yes, but
I mean,
again,
it's set in space, so it helps. So
it helps somewhat. And again, it's not like Star Wars is a direct like Star Wars is not directly inspired by this Kurosawa film. It is
yeah.
directly inspired by another Kurosawa film.
Hmm.
But yeah, and again, it's of course the fact that of course that Kurosawa film and this Kurosawa film also shares a connection, which also is shared by shares a connection with the Western genre.
Hmm.
It's the ambivalence towards the emergence of technology.
So
It's the presence of guns in Seven
yeah,
Samurai,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Mm. They are the
which is
biggest
also
threat in
yeah,
Seven Samurai.
it's Seven Samurai, which is also one of the major linchpins in the Hidden Fortress.
Yeah. Mm.
Guns.
Mm.
They are also the major linchpin.
Well, they were correct to
And
predict fears for it. I mean, it's proved out,
yeah,
proved to be the case. Also, it's
eh,
probably just World War II, no? I think
yes, yes.
right. So
Of
it's
course.
that also. So
And of course, it tracks well with the Western genre's own ambivalence of
mm.
technology because the telegraph pole, communication,
Yeah,
all that stuff is finally letting the Wild West, closing the borders of the openness of the Wild West.
yeah.
So it's like again, you can draw a connection. You can say frivolously that
So
Kurosawa
better for
influenced,
essay as opposed to a
yeah,
film. Okay.
as opposed to a film. Yeah, Kurosawa influenced Westerns or Westerns influenced Kurosawa. But at the end of the day, that's a simplistic
It's
assumption more.
there are universal similarities, I suppose, but the specificities are very different. I think
Specificities
so.
are very different. History is very different,
History
and
different. Yeah,
Seven Samurai is nothing if not very historically
yeah,
detailed.
yeah.
It is very, very detailed.
Didn't someone also remake Harakiri just
Yes,
because
Takashi Miike. Takashi Miike?
amongst the hundred of movies he makes? Yes, yes, he
Yes,
did.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
I was like, someone did remake that also, didn't they?
He remade
Uh,
he remade a version of Seven Samurai also. It's called
oh
13 Assassin.
God,
Yes, it's called 13
why?
Assassin. I mean, if that movie is not bad. It
Oh,
it was not bad. It was quite entertaining. It was not bad.
wait, Takashi Miike is a fun director. It's just that why? It's like, I mean, I'm just like,
I think I
idiots.
think that question is redundant at this point. It's like asking him why are you making 100 movies? Why are you making 200 movies in a
Why are
filmography?
you
It's like
making
asking
Visitor
Hong Sen's
Q?
yeah.
Is that
Why
his
are you,
movie? Yeah.
it's like asking Hong Sang-soo why
Oh
are you
yeah.
making the same movie every year? But sure, man. Eh, Everybody's going to listen to this podcast and look at me and say I'm a Philistine. Okay.
No, Hong Sen. So I mean, but it does have an effect. I think. I don't know if it had it. I have not. I think filmmakers benefit from making films, one or two films in the span of 3 or 4 years. Every year when they
Yes.
release, I think there's that. I'm like, oh, another Hong Sang-soo film. Yeah, sure. And then after
Yeah,
that,
sure.
yeah, sure, nothing goes ahead. I don't watch it. That's the whole problem. I'm just like, yeah, sure, it's great. I'm sure it's great because he makes very good films. I'm just like, but I've seen it already. It's one of
And
those things. Yeah, but anyways, we're not no
mm,
not going to hang. He's a totally different school of cinema compared
School of
to
Cinema compared to a Kurosawa, though
yeah,
to be fair to Kurosawa actually dabbled his hands at various different genres.
yeah, he did. I
He
mean,
was
Dreams is
just very
very weird. Like it's just a very
yeah.
surrealist sort of
He
film. Yeah,
he was just very attracted to the samurais
sure.
in general. He was just very attracted to the depiction and he wanted to depict them in heroic lights
Hmm.
without like foregoing their flaws. I
Of
don't think
course.
he was as acidic towards them as Kobayashi was. Like,
No, I think Koyashi is like, if he met a
yes,
samurai, he would have chopped him off, I think. But that's also because,
yes,
well, even though he was a pacifist, but whatever. Like, but
yes,
his ideology towards any kind of violence is very anti. He served in the war and he was a pacifist
mm,
who had to serve in the war. Like that's essentially will break your will
spirit.
in the will or anything about the world. So his all of his work stems from that. So that's a different uh thing. But no, I'm
Yeah,
thinking like John Ford is a good like especially
yes,
50s. 50s John
50s.
Ford, the revisionist version of John Ford, maybe chimes better with Akira Kurosawa's, because I would argue that The Searchers, for all its flaws, and there are many flaws in it,
It's a great
is
film. It's
is
still a great film.
it is about, a complicated samurai gunslinging figure in that
The
sense. But yes,
futility of violence. It's about the
yeah,
futility of violence in a way.
and how sometimes these people don't know how to look beyond it still, even if they know that it's
Hmm.
futile, or it's one of
Yes,
those things. So
because they feel like they're part of a like fated process of their
yeah,
own life, which is
yeah,
fascinating because
absolutely.
that's exactly what the samurais also feel, and this
Yeah, yeah.
and
Again, there are
they
similarities definitely in like, but I think that might actually make a very interesting thing about manhood and maleness, and how that sort of plays into both these characters, as opposed
I think
to.
each and every character within the quote unquote seven samurai
Hmm,
are all like versions of like you can take a character and you can essentially craft a trope out of them.
sure.
Like yeah, it's because
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure
Katsushiro
that's
is the
been
youth,
done
right?
also.
Yes,
So it's,
of course.
yeah. Uh, it's yeah,
Katsushiro is the youth, right?
yeah.
He's the youth.
There's the youth
He's
versus
eager
old
to
thing
learn.
also going on totally there. So yeah.
Hmm, hmm. He's
Um,
eager to learn. He's
yeah.
eager to learn, and yeah.
Yeah.
Then there is the guy who is the woodcutter guy who is somewhat like clueless about his talent.
He's also a comic relief, but
Yeah.
yeah, but a actually funny one also, which is the
Hmm,
other thing. A lot of
hmm.
comic reliefs are not funny also nowadays, so can't do that.
He's
Uh,
funny in that he's clueless about his own comedy.
yeah.
Sometimes he's clueless about his own comic
And
timing.
he's not out of control like Kikichio, no. So
Yeah.
he's very much within the group, but light-hearted.
I I think in a way Kurosawa knew that you cannot regulate comic timing beyond what Mifune is doing
Yeah,
because that is almost impossible.
yeah,
So he's like anybody else trying to do the comedy, he must have been like lower,
lower.
lower.
Yeah.
You're not going there. Lower.
Yeah.
Let him do what he wants.
Whatever he did, like, again, but again, that stuff can also come across super annoying. But again, it's the way it's blocked, the way it's shot, the way he's separated. I think is the big thing. Like he barely feels part of the group for the
He
longest
feels
time.
yeah, yeah. And that is both shown narratively as well as from a filmic point of
Visually,
view.
yeah,
It's
you don't need to
yeah.
hear the movie at all for this. You literally look at
No,
the movie and you will know.
absolutely not.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's why the whole film school thing comes from, I think. Like, if you turn the volume off, you will know what story is being told visually. A very simple funda, actually, which
Yes.
I essentially forgotten art today, so we can't even say anything about that.
And I think these simple fundamentals, and I think this would be a good way to close off this
Hmm.
discussion also, is that I think these simple fundamentals need to be brought back into filmmaking itself because
Patience nahi hai na, sir.
there is a lack of patience. I think filmmaking itself is in a sort of crisis.
Hmm.
Uh, I think it is ludicrous to expect good filmmaking or thematically rich filmmaking only coming from art house or independent
Yeah,
filmmakers. Why should that be the case? Why
absolutely.
should it why shouldn't commercial films or big budget films employ any form of filmmaking style or thematic richness? Why
Yeah.
shouldn't there be? Of course there should be. But if that means we have to go back to the basics, like
I suppose
the
Sinners
basics are right
recently
there.
did, right?
I suppose Sinners recently did. And I suppose there are other films coming down the pipe which might be able to do that. I
I mean,
don't know.
like,
Like,
I think if you hand someone like a Spielberg, he'll craft a very well made action film. Script, of course, is doubt. Whoever writes it, I don't know, or whatever he plays around with.
yeah, yeah.
But
But
it's
again,
the popcorn entertainer. What do you want from a popcorn entertainer? I don't want to have people. You went and had the best time of your life in Minecraft, so you will know this. But I don't want to sit there and have, because I saw videos of people like essentially destroying cinema halls while
yes, yes.
watching their popcorn entertainers. I don't want to do that. I want to, like, your popcorn entertainers. I do want to munch that popcorn, but I also want to come out and be like, oh, you know what? That was a really, really good time. Not in a
Because at the
I destroyed the cinema. In the I actually had a very, very substantial time there.
we can poo-poo commercial cinema all we want, and for good reason also because there are a lot of bad commercial cinemas.
Yeah.
But of course, we can't ignore the fact that commercial cinema is cinema at its most accessible. Mainstream cinema
Yep.
is the through line through which we entered into the cinema watching business or whatever
Yep.
it is. And there are very few filmmakers like a Christopher Nolan who manages to like imbibe mainstream sensibilities with their own personal touches. So,
Yep.
and we can trace that all back to filmmakers like Kurosawa, filmmakers like a John Ford.
Yep.
So, and
Bring back the Western. Can someone please bring back the Western? I don't know. Maybe that's the
no,
easiest
I
way of
think that is
reviving it.
brought back. I think that is brought back, but
Which
I think
Western
it
did
is there.
well though? I'm trying to think.
No,
Sinners did. Sinners is half a Western, I suppose.
half a Western, yes.
Yeah. Um,
Of course, you have Ari Aster's Ellington coming, which is supposed to be a Western, but I'm like, oh God, okay.
that
You can-
sort of, not the A24 Western. I'm talking about the commercial Western, like an actual, like if that is what is required to get back to solid classic filmmaking, like solid filmmaking in which you can actually feel like stuff is, you know, of worth, of emotional worth, then sure, why not? It's
Just
very
let commercial, just let filmmakers who want to make commercial filmmaking, just leave them alone.
वो
Just
तो
give
नहीं
them the
होने वाला
money and
सर.
leave
You
them
are
alone.
that's the
Yes,
impossible you're asking for today.
yes, yes.
Also, you'll
For
probably
today,
get
that is almost
that one
impossible.
one
Yeah.
exam, but then you'll get Megalopolis. So I'm like, it's a lost cause left, right, and center, I suppose. Well, maybe there should be an age restriction to this.
Maybe, or maybe let the youth, like Ryan Coogler or all these other filmmakers with their
Yeah, I
own
mean, I'm happy to hear that there's
energy.
like like I know Nolan has his detractors, but I mean, I think there's very few filmmakers who've managed to, unlock that, well, minus Tenet, unlock that
Hmm.
thing with where they can mesh art with entertainment. So yeah, I mean,
I
that's
mean, there's Jordan Peele, there's him,
yeah,
Coogler, there's Nolan. So there are filmmakers. There are filmmakers, of course, outside Hollywood also.
sure.
So who are making good work.
Rajamouli, question
Rajamouli is there.
mark.
Question mark? Yes. There's there's Lokesh Kanagaraj? Question
Yeah,
mark. Yeah. So you get a lot of people out there. So
yeah.
just go back to the basics. To all of
Hmm.
these people, just go back to the basics. Just look at what he's doing. Just
Just
trust
copy
on your
him. Are
films.
we back to that? Let's just copy someone's work, which was the
Hmm.
advice we gave to Bollywood filmmakers last time we talked about the stuff they released, because
Yes.
their imagination will destroy us.
Yes. Yes. At this
On that,
point, no, but that is good. When modernity fails, classics always help us
of
survive.
course, yeah, go back to
So
the templates. It's fine. Like, and of course you do your stuff with the templates, but what you
choose good templates. There are lots of templates. Choose good templates and go back to those.
But Amartya, at the end of the day, those templates will only work if they can add something in it. Like essay, if they're just gonna
Yes.
just copy paste templates, then it's just like, then what are we watching? Like then we'd rather watch whatever has been made. No, why would you want to watch something new?
Yes, of
That's
course. Like if
sticky.
I want to watch like if I want to watch an Indiana Jones,
Hmm.
if I want to watch an Indiana Jones like movie, I would like to watch a good Indiana Jones like movie. I wouldn't want to watch an Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny and just be bored out of my freaking
I
skull.
thought you were gonna say I'm
So
not gonna watch Uncharted because it's essentially the same thing. So I mean, it's anyways.
yes.
Anyways, we can despair about modern contemporary cinema as much as we want. Amartya has had a decent time recently in the cinema, so I don't know why he's in despairing mode. I
Mm.
have no, I've basically left cinema. I'm on a temporary break from cinema since 2 months, so I am allowed to be a bit despairing, I think. But you just
Yes.
enjoyed the film, so it's
Yes,
fine.
I did. I did. Yeah.
For fits and
And
spurts. Yes,
yeah, it fits his purse. I think
yeah,
that's the way to go. Yeah.
sure.
On that very cheerful note, on
I
that
mean, the
very,
film
very
doesn't
cheerful
end
note.
on the cheerful notes. I think it's fair.
Yeah. Yeah. So on that note, thank you to Dhruv Krishna Goyal for joining me on this,
Thank
I
you for
think,
inviting me, sir.
maiden voyage. Maiden voyage. I think, yeah, this is
I'm
the
looking
first
forward.
voyage.
You tell me which Jidaegeki old films. I think I'm more receptive to watching right now, so I will go back to them. They are like like a shield.
Soothing balm.
Shield, yeah,
Soothing
yeah.
balm at this point. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you for coming on this maiden voyage for quote unquote genre literacy. People really need genre literacy at this point. Film literacy is at an all-time low. So at this point, they really need that. But again, thank you to all the listeners, all the subscribers, all 36 of you. I am so glad you have joined. Thank you so much. You gave a guy like me enough confidence at this point. So
Yeah.
all the 36 subscribers of genre literacy, thank you for listening. If you do, all the subscribers of Queen is Dead, if you do listen to this, thank you very much. Please subscribe. To anybody else who is listening, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Please.
And you're genre literate now. That's
And you're genre
that's
literate.
the
Yes.
certificate you get for listening to
That's a
this podcast.
certificate you're genre literate now. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Done.
Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Khatam. Yes.